Okay, welcome to this conversation around schools and the Inflation Reduction Act. Once again, I'm Jonathan Klein, a co-founder with Undaunted K-12. Thanks so much for joining. Sarah Ross has dropped the meeting notes in the chat. If you're just joining, please add your organization and name to the participants list at the top. We put the Undaunted names in there. If you can take a minute to do that, that would be great. If there's anyone new, first time on one of these calls, we've been meeting for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months now. I see a couple folks. If you could just introduce yourself, just name and sort of organization so folks can give you a wave. And then we will, I'll turn things over to Sarah Ross for what's new in IRA land, just generally, and then we'll come back to updates and sort of what's the latest on the Hangover issue and advocacy. So who's first time caller tonight?
Hi there, I am Eric Lotke. I work with the National Education Association, and I'm a second chair on this one. Justin Thompson is the first chair, and I don't see him here. I'm not sure why not, but we are with the National Education Association.
Great, thanks for joining, Eric.
Hi all, Jacqueline Ramirez from BDC.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, I'm Sophia Paulus. I'm from the Aspen Institute. This is Planet Ed Initiative.
Anybody else new to the group? First time call?
My name is Brenton Sales. I'm with the NAACP.
Great. Okay, I think that's everybody for today. So if you can add your name and organization in the meeting notes, and I'll turn things over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Thanks for being here. Excited to dig in some more on what's new in IRA and schools land since our last meeting. The first item up there, we noticed a new fact sheet from Treasury that has been very helpful in establishing for those that are curious and questioning around schools and their applicability for tax credits. It's a great piece that just says schools and tax credits in the same place by an authority figure called the Treasury Department. So that's been handy just to overcome questions about the relevance of this policy for schools. So I would encourage you to use that and promote that in some of your pieces where you're trying to drum up school folks' interest in this as a new source of funding for improving school buildings. The second bit of what's new is office hours. So the IRS has done a pretty groundbreaking thing and announced a set of office hours to help this new set of entities that are going to be interacting with the IRS around this direct pay payment mechanism for tax credits. So they've already held several office hours. Some of us have been on some of them. Sarah Heine, my colleague, was just on the earlier one from today. I know Natalia from our WRI was on an earlier one last week. There are several more, 5 more sessions here still in the future. And so one of the things we want to throw out is to have a volunteer from this group attend those office hours. They are a good place just to be a fly in the wall and listen to real people, real users of this new portal trying to make it happen in this new direct pay portal. So if folks can fit in any of these office hours to your schedule and you want to kind of hear where the rubber is meeting the road between the IRS and our schools and other non-taxable entities, we would love to have you put your name in there as a volunteer to attend one of those office hours and, you know, share around some notes or if anything spicy comes up. Sarah Heine, maybe I could put you on the spot and just, you know, can you give some flavor to, you know, your experience of going to those office hours today? Who was here? How'd that go? What did you learn? What would you say to this group about those office hours?
Sure. So it ran the gamut of people were asking questions for the chat, and my impression was there weren't many schools. It was more like churches or nonprofits or food banks posing questions. There were definitely questions around timelines. So The standard answer was depends on your accounting year, and that will build out. We'll work to get you things as soon as possible. So like kind of this emphasis on you enter your pre-registration, we'll work really hard to get you back your registration number. And then there were some questions just around like 1 megawatt requirement for bonus credits, around apprenticeship requirements. And so the standard answer was, we won't be able to answer all your credit questions. Those are on irs.gov. This is about the portal. But there was a statement like instructions should be coming out really soon if they're not already. So signaling that they're finalizing the guidelines that are still pending. So that was a little bit of the flavor. I don't know if anybody else was on today's call or if that echoes last week's call.
Natalia, do you want to share some of your experience from an office hours that you went to?
Yeah, I'd say it was the same as Sarah's experience. There was one school that asked a question on Fridays, but yeah, it was mostly churches for whatever reason. I guess there's a lot of churches that are putting solar panels on their roofs, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they were directing folks a lot of the time to the user guide that they kept saying that was kind of their holy grail and would answer any question that folks were posing. The one thing I didn't love is that they kept reiterating how simple and easy the process is, which I'm sure they believe so because they wrote the guidance, and they want to hope that it's easy. But I felt like they weren't kind of answering folks' questions maybe directly, which maybe they can't. But kind of being a little bit snarky that this is very, very simple and that folks should have an easy time if they just look at the guidance. And I wanted to say, well, there's this really big issue that you guys aren't addressing. But yeah, otherwise I'm planning on attending a few other ones just to see if there's any other questions that are posed. But yeah, it seems like it's helpful for any like user errors or folks not being able to like get through the website. That's kind of the questions that were being asked during my session.
Yeah. And something like EIN, did you want to talk about EIN in schools and EIN? Didn't you write me a note about that?
Right. Yeah, there was a couple, I think maybe it was the one school that had asked the question that they didn't know what their EIN number was. And the response was apply for one online, but there was no link to where to do that. But I did a quick look on the IRS website, and it seems like it's on their front page to apply for an EIN if they don't already have one or don't know what theirs is. But that was a question that came up a couple times.
All right. So new forum, first getting some questions asked and a new chance to kind of see where the rubber's meeting the road for all of you that want to get into that nitty gritty.
And sorry, Sarah, real quick. Natalia,
Yeah.
if you know which of those 5 you're planning to attend and could put your name there, because I think we're looking, it's 5 total hours that we're trying to cover across the network. And so if Natalia, if you're going to do 1 or 2 of them, then maybe we're just looking for a couple other organizations to say, yeah, we can do an hour or we can do 2 hours and kind of get some coverage from the network so there's somebody from our schools community on each of the calls just listening and can reporting back to the group.
I'll add my name. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Great. Have we seen new guidance yet? That was a question I had on 45W or 30C. Anything new there yet, or any other new things that I've missed that people want to add on to the list of what's new since we last met? No, it hasn't been a short amount of time.
We did get new 30C guidance that came out on Friday.
Okay.
I don't know if they're technically not calling it guidance. They're in their issuing statement. They said that there's going to be forthcoming proposed guidance, but that this document, this notice that they published can be relied upon by tax-paying entities. But the big thing there is that we got the maps released for what a non-urban census tract is, which is what we've been waiting for the last year and a half. And they seem to have taken a really expansive approach, which is great. I'll drop a link in the chat for the notice, or I guess I'll put it in the notes as well. And the mapping tool that they're using for folks to see, if their area or physical address is a qualifying census tract for that credit.
Okay, and it's non-urban and
Non-urban and low income.
low income.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, and this map, just to be clear, is different than the low income bonus credit for the solar. That was like a different map for energy communities. And energy communities is a different map than this.
Yes, that is a different map. This is
Okay.
specific to the way that this tool is set up. It says like 30C eligibility, so it's specific to the credit.
Got it.
Because to be eligible for 30C, you have to be in one of the locations on the map, which is the only credit that has a geographic requirement.
To my knowledge, yes. But yeah, you have to be within one of those census tracts to qualify.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else got something new that they want to share? Okay. We'll keep moving. So moving on to the advocacy piece and or office hours. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
So advocacy around the issue that we spent a lot of time talking about last time, this hangover issue. So that work continues. We had an acknowledgement of this hangover issue on the elective pay webinar. So Laura Blatchford herself, for those of you that attended, acknowledged that this is an issue that they are working on. They acknowledged it also in the first office hours. They got a question about this. They also acknowledged it there. They left the door open to potentially solving the issue, but basically said there's no fix that they can offer right now. What we have heard through channels is the politicals are behind solving it, but that is currently with lawyers at IRS who are trying to understand whether they have the ability to solve it. We saw a notice from Treasury, I think it was yesterday, and a press release from a few days earlier that celebrated that 1,000+ projects had used this new portal. If you dig into that announcement, the vast majority, about 1,000, were using this new portal for transferability, which is for the private sector. Our schools are using direct pay. There are only 110 of those. And my suspicion is that the vast majority of those 110 are either early pre-filings for a later tax year and or reflect pre-filings for nonprofits that happen to have a January to December fiscal year and therefore will not be affected by this hangover issue. But we have, yet to find a school or a public sector entity that will successfully be able to access direct pay for this first cohort of projects where the filing is due May 15th. And so, as we've thought more about the timeline for this, and hopefully this was clear from the note that we sent yesterday, as we thought more about the timeline for this, what we've come to realize is that we don't think we're going to have any schools projects to celebrate, or potentially many public sector projects to celebrate before the 2024 election, because the combination of this hangover issue and the fact that if you're not hungover, by definition, that means you're in a later fiscal year where your filing isn't due till November 15th. So, this is continued to be quite frustrating for us. And I'm sure for many of you too, and more so for the people who are hoping to get these tax credits. We've continued to learn about, more school districts. There's a large urban district in Massachusetts that got a bunch of electric school buses. They, their credits are at risk. We heard about tribal governments or tribes in New Mexico installing solar that are caught up in this mess, other schools, counties. So again, this is just kind of more and more of this coming out of the woodwork. Let me stop there for a second and see if people have questions about kind of the political stakes and the timeline that we've kind of more deeply understood now about how this is all going to work. No? Okay, so in terms of additional advocacy work, you know, we hope that folks are using the materials that we've sent out, the one pager that, you know, we continue to be told that it's good for direct advocacy by as many individuals, either organizations or affected projects, to write to Laura Blatchford, who you saw on that webinar as the Chief Implementation Officer for IRA. So we hope that your organizations are continuing to write notes in and encourage them to fix this. The more the merrier. We should keep that up. Lawyers for Good Government is organizing a group sign-on letter. You know, when that is ready, we can certainly circulate that to you all, but we want to just, again, encourage folks to write their own individual letter. There was a model letter that Rewiring America sent in, which was great. Thank you guys for doing that. And, you know, would encourage you all on this call to do the same from your own organizations. And if you did write a letter, please share it with us, and we would love to celebrate your advocacy also on this issue. Questions on advocacy? Comments on what you all are doing on advocacy on this, or if you've had any bandwidth to engage on this.
And Sarah, sorry if I missed it, but have we asked if anybody else has found a public sector or schools project that has a successfully, you know, pre-filed yet for 2023 projects? Is that heads this way? No one has.
Okay. Well, that seems like pretty good confirmation that this is pretty much a blanket issue because none of us can find a pot. I mean, again, so right, in order for us to have an actual something to celebrate that's going to be filed May 15th, we would have to find a school with a accounting year that's January to December. And you know, as we talk with more and more state leaders, like, no, our whole state works on July to June, right? Talk with Maryland there, yeah, our whole state, every school, July to June. New Mexico, whole state, July to June. Massachusetts, whole state, July to June, all schools. So, you know, it's becoming increasingly clear that we are not going to have likely any schools unless we can find one on a January to December calendar year, accounting year, that installed clean energy equipment. And I think the same is likely true of our public sector entities. So certainly if anyone finds a needle in a haystack, someone who's able to file because of, you know, their installation of clean energy and their accounting year, let us know. But what we are finding is that that's going to be a null set for us, but we would love to be proven wrong or have a few squeak through here.
Sarah, do you see Natalia's question? Do we have a list of the states and their fiscal years?
I don't have a list of all those states. Yeah, if that's something you want to find, that would be great. It was occurring to me that that's, you know, we've been trying to find projects, but a different ways just to say, just look at the fiscal years in each state and you know exactly what's going to happen.
Do we have, I think you just mentioned what, Massachusetts, Maryland,
Massachusetts, Maryland, New Mexico, those were all just Wisconsin. They said it wasn't a law, but effectively so, right, Sarah?
I feel like I heard like that is the common practice across. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't gone online to find the resource that says like for every state what it is. I don't know if that exists, but you know, as we talk with leaders in states, that's what we're hearing.
Sarah, real quick, can you remind me what that time frame of that hangover effect is? Just because I am constantly looking at different years, like fiscal years and tax years and other things.
Yeah. So the hangover is going to be whatever months are in the fiscal year that started in 2022 and extend into 2023, right? So if your fiscal year goes from July to June, then your hangover months are going to be January to June of 2023. Right? If
Yeah,
you
that
have
makes
a fiscal
sense.
year that starts November 1st, you're going to have 10 months of hangover.
Right.
right? So remember last time we talked about Illinois, and 94% of their counties have a fiscal year that starts November 1. They're going to have 10 months of hangover.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Right? So it's whatever that part of your fiscal year that hangs over into 2023 is. Those are the months that are going to be affected. Okay, anyone want to share any feedback or advocacy that they've been doing on this, other pieces of the puzzle? Feedback or conversation you've been having with affected schools, affected district leaders? Tish, any of your slice group talking about this or having issues with this?
Yeah, we're still trying to collect feedback on timing and just getting confirmation on when their fiscal year is. But Kristen sent you an email that earlier today. Kristen, you want to jump in and kind of just have an idea? Like, we're brainstorming on what kind of tax help we could find. Since you had the energy tax advisors on Jacob Goldman, I reached out to him just to follow up, like, hey, would you be willing to do, like, could we pay you just to do his own like office hours, like virtual support session kind of idea. So then, schools that just need really targeted help can ask some questions. And yes, we're trying to brainstorm or find a resource like that where, they can, it sounds like those office hours, like, Ray, I'm so glad you have a question, but if it's not about the portal, just go to the guide. Like, they want some more help than that. So we're trying to figure out a resource that, hey, if anyone on here wants to partner to do something like that or find a resource. When I asked Jacob Goldman about it, he seems to kind of have a formula webinar that he's doing on repeat, literally like multiple times a day, because I think just for his own business, he just unlocked a whole new sector of business for himself. I think he's just doing this rinse and repeat webinar, and we're hoping for something a little more custom where, a school district can get on and like, here's my particular situation. Can you at least just answer some basic questions so they know how to move forward and that kind of thing. So we're trying to figure out a way to host something like that. If anyone wants to partner with us to do something, I think there's definitely a need for it. I see a couple of hands.
Great. Yeah, Tim, do you want to jump in? You were first there.
Yeah, I still haven't heard of any efforts for this issue coming up. And I did share it with David Terry at NASIO with state energy offices, and he has not indicated that he's heard of any states with this issue either. So I don't know. Maybe not too many people jump to do this. Maybe they just were scared.
And this is Harley. I generally
go ahead, Harley.
I did chat with Jeff Genzer at our in-person meeting, and he that they had a conversation with Treasury about this and had basically heard the same thing, that they're looking into it and seeing what their legal authority is.
Great, and for those of you who know,
and that's what we heard too.
Yep, and Genzer is at NASIO.
Yeah, I had shared the one pager with him when it first came out as well.
Great.
I've heard a lot from our school leaders that we're connected with, that they're just generally overwhelmed and even figuring out what they're even eligible for and the process. I think, it's not even about like, how do I get pre-filed? It's what am I eligible for, and how do I start this process?
Yeah. Dwight, you want to jump in?
You guys were talking about the hangover issue right now, right? Okay.
Well, yeah, I think part of identifying the hangover issues is people didn't even know that they could come to this party.
Yeah,
what Kristen and others were saying.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't missed it, and there was something else being talked about. Can you set up a Zoom where when you join the Zoom, you hit up like 2 or 3 different rooms inside the Zoom. And then you could have a a webinar or a Zoom call about this, but people would go into the room that makes sense, and then they could leave that room and go into one of the other rooms. Because there's like, it seems to me like there's lots of really compartmentalized issues here to get people comfortable with it. Like, what qualifies? Well, a lot of people ain't going to want to sit through that because they realize what qualifies. But if you
Yeah,
don't,
that's a good point.
you want to get into the what qualifies room and figure out what qualifies. It seems to me like we might be able to fit into four little things, or maybe less, I don't know, but have one Zoom for 2 or 3 hours or office hours where you can go into different categories. Then might be also easier to find someone who's capable of covering a category rather than just in general.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. So yeah, outside of the break, the hangover issue, just kind of a general way to structure TA to school districts, have them sort into these buckets of where on the learning curve are they.
Yeah, and I mean, and if there's a part of the learning curve I can help with, I could probably be willing to do it, and I'm more of a generalist, but who knows? I'm about to try to get onto the portal and see what, whether I can do it or not.
Great. Phoebe, anything to share from your network of sustainability folks? Are you having any conversation around this?
Yeah, sadly, similar to Gen 180's update, I think folks are really trying to process those that like know where they're at. I haven't heard of anyone who's dealing with this hangover issue. And then others are just trying to process, like wrapping their head around what's next and how to get started. So yeah, I haven't heard much, and Anissa's unable to join today. So I don't know if you have an update from her on our advocacy efforts, but it sounded like they're still in the works.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can keep any other questions before we move off this topic. I mean, we'll share the letter if Lawyers for Good Government signs on to it, or has a sign-on letter that we can share around. And again, would love for you all to write letters into Treasury if you haven't already. And anything else before we move off this topic? Okay, I'll turn over to you, Jonathan.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. So we wanted to just close with a brief conversation just to see if folks have energy around particular topics for where we go next with this group. So our current thinking is that we would have the next call would be sometime in March. Right now, we're targeting March 19th. Many of us will see each other at the Green Schools Conference between now and then in Santa Fe. And that unless there's some, kind of emergent update on the hangover or other things, like we can, take, 5 or 6 weeks before we come back together again. And I think that like at the moment we would be driving toward, a conversation about apprenticeship requirements. What are they and what are the role of state programs, and trying to kind of level us all up on that, because that's coming. Obviously, we'll continue to track the hangover and any updates, there, but are there other topics that folks would like to see this group, kind of either bringing in a speaker or, kind of tackling together? We've got, there are other labor standards and provisions. We've got domestic content provisions that have kind of come up before that we haven't kind of gone deep on over the arc of these calls. So those are in the parking lot too. And we may have greenhouse gas reduction fund, awardees, at some point along the way that we could kind of talk about the implications there. So I'll stop. Just anything on your mind that you'd say, hey, yeah, it would be great in March, to come together and spend some time on X. Or this plan sounds good and, let's move on apprenticeship.
I'm fine with apprenticeship in March. It feels like that might be the most applicable then. It would be nice, even if we don't have any schools users, by April or May, if there are other entities that have like gone through the process and could share feedback, that could be really helpful for us to know that and then advise our school contacts. So maybe there is a church or a nonprofit that has successfully completed the forms and gone through that step by
Great.
step.
Smart. See some head nods on that one. Any other ideas? Any other sparks? Okay. So look for that calendar invite for March 19th. Be in touch if you hear anything more about either schools that are hungover or schools that are finding their way through the process. Be in touch if there are networks and communities that we can partner with you to help them understand, the nuts and bolts here and what the opportunity is and what we're learning about how to apply. I don't know. Let me look up on the notes. Are there any? Thank you, Natalia. Natalia's name is on the next couple office hours. There are some February dates that are still open. If anybody can give an hour to attend office hours, appreciate folks thinking about that. And then I noticed, we have a few folks who this is your first call. And so add your email to the notes someplace or share it with us so we can get you on the distribution list for these calls and the calendar updates for these calls, because we will, while the next meeting may not be in 6 weeks, we will, as we get updates, we'll work to keep you in the loop and communicate offline as well. Any other updates or comments before we close out, either from Sarah, or anybody else?
Shouldn't the next steps include sign-on letters, a group sign-on letter, or creating your own or something like that? And I don't know that we'll write our own, but we would happily sign on to a group letter.
Yeah, Lawyers for Good Governance is supposed to be drafting one, Eric. So as soon as that's ready, I will share it over. We are a small organization. We've already put many hours into this hangover issue, and at the expense of other things we need to get going on. So we're gonna draft off of Lawyers for Good Government on this one, and hopefully share around their sign-on letter to you all. But thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it.
And thank you, Jonathan, for putting it in the next steps note.
Yep.
Right where I was for it.
Yep. And I did up in 3E, we added a link to Rewiring's letter. So if individual organizations, want a template and can get something in, if you haven't yet, to Laura Blatchford, I think that is a good next step as well. Thanks for that flag, Eric.
Yeah, shameless plug for joining us in Santa Fe. Jonathan will be there. The whole Undaunted team, my team, Gen 180. Who else? I don't know. Tim, are you coming? So no, Sarah's helping lead okay, great. A workshop on this topic, grants and federal funding, with Jacob Goldman, who some of you met. And it'll be a great community connection time. So join us March 5th through 7th, Santa Fe. Love to have you.
Thank you, Phoebe and Jenny, for organizing.
Oh yeah, Jenny, sorry, I didn't even see you over there.
Phoebe, how full is it?
How full is it? We did increase capacity, so we have more space finally for folks. So we have we're probably I'm thinking we're gonna hit around 500, maybe 550. Wow. So but we got
right on.
I just dropped the link in the chat so you can follow through on registration, and we'd love to see you all there.
Great.
Thank you.
And I would like to personally invite you to the Tito's party on Tuesday evening. Standard highlights of the conference. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody, both to be serious and to play. So
awesome.
No more hangover issues though.
Yeah,
oh, maybe. Who knows? A different type.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for all of your engagement and work on this issue. We'll see you hopefully in Santa Fe and definitely in March.
I think your work is, persistent and staying focused on something like this is daunting for a group named Undaunted. So
thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Take care.
All
All
right.
right, see y'all.
Bye.
Bye.